Right, let's go back to our story about naturalization in South Africa and the challenges faced by people as South Africa navigated through the COVID-19 pandemic, and the Department of Home Affairs opening and closing doors to some of its services, citing protection of its staff members. We're joined by Petra Marais, who is an attorney at the Legal Resources Centre. Petra, very good evening to you, and thank you so much for speaking to us. Now, as I mentioned earlier, that a lot of your work focuses on education and the rights of asylum seekers and refugees. What changes have you noticed over this corresponding period that I was speaking about, mainly lockdown, and what has been the effect of those seeking citizenship?
Thank you for having me. So yes, of course, we've seen several services from the Department of Home Affairs that's open and closed during the different alert levels. So one service that is not yet open is that citizenship by naturalization. So this is the one very specific citizenship process where it's not citizenship by descent, therefore you're born in South Africa and you qualify for citizenship, but it's people that were born in South Africa and that were fully registered, therefore they do have birth certificate, and they stay in South Africa until the age of turning 18 years old, and they were born to parents.
Petra, I do apologize for interrupting you, but I'm just hoping that we can get a better connection, because not only am I struggling to hear you, but I know that there is also another call that is interrupting our viewers from being able to fully gauge what you're saying. So you're just, breaking it down, what in a legal sense citizenship means, and whom is trying to access this recognition by law of a specific country. Here we're talking about South Africa and members of this country. So just tell us a little bit more about the challenges that people experience during this period.
Yes, thank you very much. So the challenges people experience is, for example, they are undocumented. Some people are completely undocumented. Others, for example, have been able to renew their refugee status. However, certain people are left in limbo because they qualify for citizenship by naturalization, but unfortunately not able to submit their applications. So one challenge that we have, for example, seen is accessing higher education bursaries. So a lot of bursaries are reserved for South African citizens. However, these people qualify in theory for these bursaries, but unfortunately they cannot access any of these bursaries available because they're unable to access or to apply for citizenship.
I mean, what are the formalities if you are seeking naturalization in South Africa? How long would you have to be here? And we know in the past there's been some controversies over some individuals who would have gained naturalization to South Africa or deemed to have. So who is entitled to this?
So in terms of Section 4.3, that's the specific section I'm referring to, you have to meet certain requirements, and it's quite strict as well. You have to be born in South Africa, and your birth needs to be duly registered. Therefore, you do need to have a birth certificate issued by the Department of Home Affairs. Then you need to stay in South Africa until you turn 18 years old, and you also need to be born to parents who are non-South African citizens, who are not admitted for permanent residence. Therefore, if you meet these requirements, you qualify for citizenship. And it's a very sacred process that actually acknowledges the sense of belonging that you have in South Africa, because these young individuals have no other home other than South Africa. So it's, instead of having your normal citizenship by descent process, it is a very specific section in the Citizenship Act that actually refers to citizenship by naturalization.
Now, in 2020, I think it was the Supreme Court of Appeal overturning with punitive costs against the Home Affairs Department a case of two brothers born of Angolan parents who were said not to be able to access this right, even though they were born in South Africa and had birth certificates to this effect.
Yeah, so this is the chief's judgment, and in line with it agrees with this personal sense of citizenship, where you have your legal formality of citizenship, but it recognizes that our Constitution confirms as well, specifically for these two individuals, that your citizenship cannot be removed from you if you are a South African citizen. And in terms of these processes, these individuals who are born in South Africa, they've lived here their whole lives. And now they can actually start the process to regularize their stay on a more permanent basis than just, for example, a refugee permit that has to be renewed every 4 years.
Now, let's talk about the effect of lockdown. I understand that essentially applicants were left stranded. You mentioned it, in limbo, because they were not issued with identity numbers and identity cards after signing their citizenship declaration. So what then becomes their legal status?
So it all depends what is the current legal status. For example, some people would be using study permits, or they'd be using immigration visas, where other clients would, for example, have been using refugee permits. So that will all depend on what your current status is before you apply for citizenship. But a very important factor of this is that citizenship applications take very long to be processed. So the legal resources center went to court, and we challenged the lack of retrospective application of conviction, because the Department of Home Affairs said that only if you were born after 2013 will you be able to access the citizenship by naturalization process. So we challenged this, and we won in the Supreme Court of Appeal. And then the original applicants actually signed their citizenship declarations in March of 2020. However, they only got their ID in May, beginning of May this year. So we're looking at, for your application to be processed, a year, maybe a few years, and there are people have to provide identity documents. So it's an extremely prolonged process, which complicates several other rights, for example, your right to education.
Petra, thank you so much for speaking to us. Petra Marais is an attorney at Legal Resources Centre, just taking us through the effect of COVID-19 and the disruption of Home Affairs services, how this has impacted on people who are asylum seekers and refugees, and those also seeking naturalization here in South Africa.